WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. All of our WNST coverage and our Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. But I also want to welcome our friends from Goodwill Industries. And at some point, John Baylaw is going to get me a Goodwill hat over here. I have all the receipts from all the times I've given to Goodwill, so I should probably just hold those up onto the screen. Luke Jones joins us now. We have been discussing sort of an incredible weekend of March Madness and basketball and spring training and sort of some hope. And then there's the NFL side of the DeShaun Watson thing, which is, when a move like this happens, last week it was Tom Brady, and that was so last weekend ago. And we've had all these free agent signings and Russell Wilson and Orange and all this stuff. But the DeShaun Watson thing is, this is a social debate, right? This is an incredible thing, I think, for Browns fans to come to grips with, and the internet, and how the Houston Texans did business, and how the Cleveland Browns are choosing to do business right now.
Yeah, and I think it's another reminder of, if you are deemed valuable on the field and you're talking about an organization that is desperate to win, desperate to have a quarterback, they'll overlook just about anything. It's funny to see the statement that the Browns put out. What was that, Sunday? I guess it was. Just, you see it. It's the graphic. It's got a lot of words. You have to zoom in to read it. And, part of me almost, and again, that's not to condone any of this. It's more so just the apologizing that goes on, or the empty platitudes that are thrown out there. Part of me would almost want to see a team at this point just say, you know what? We don't really care about the off-field stuff. We don't care if this guy's a good human being or not. We don't care if there are 22 civil suits or any of that.
We don't believe those women. We don't believe those women. That's what this says. This says we don't care.
No, I disagree with that. I don't think they really care whether they are telling the truth or not. I think they care whether DeShaun Watson can help win them football games. And look at the structure of the first year of the deal. Again, this goes back to me. I think it's the league and many teams, many owners. There's no bottom in terms of, if it's someone that can help you win a Super Bowl, they don't really care. And that's what it is for me. It's not
some teams. It's about cheating too, right? We've seen whatever the ends. When you win and have a parade, whatever you did to get there doesn't matter. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I have a tough time getting outraged about inflating footballs compared to hiring DeShaun Watson.
No, but there's no.
Sure. No, I hear you.
But I'm saying that's another case of cheating, going against the rules. Whatever the rules are, the rules don't apply to us, and social rules don't apply to them either, I guess, right? Jimmy Haslam had his own issues, with his own real world business in being nefarious, that this doesn't bother him.
Well, and I think what's really surprising, shocking about this is not that a team acquired DeShaun Watson. It's, look what the Cleveland Browns did in order to acquire him. Look what not so much the 3 first-round picks. That part wasn't surprising, but to give him a $230 million fully guaranteed contract that is now going to, this feels like a sea change. And this is where it's interesting to bring it back to the Ravens and where they are with Lamar Jackson. I'm sorry, Nestor. Anyone thinks the Ravens are going to get Lamar Jackson for 6 years, $150 million, you're kidding yourself. Those days are over. You look at where we are right now with DeShaun Watson, with the revised deal that Aaron Rodgers got, with the $40 million per year Matthew Stafford got, and you have, I think it's 6 quarterbacks in the league now with an average annual value of $40+ million a year. Lamar Jackson's going to easily eclipse $40 million a year. It's just going to be a question of whether the Ravens do it or he's going to go somewhere else in a few years. That's where we are at this point. And this goes back to what we talked about in 2013. Joe Flacco wasn't the best quarterback in the NFL, but he just won the Super Bowl and he had all the leverage. And you look at DeShaun Watson, despite the fact that he has an ongoing civil suit situation with 22 accusers that has not been remedied. Yes, he wasn't indicted. So from a legal sense, he's not going to face legal charges, but that does not mean innocent. But for him to have that situation and for the Browns to still pull the trigger on a trade and give him $230 million. I had to laugh. And one issue that I take on this personally is seeing a lot of national media types almost seem like they're being an advocate to rebuild his image. It kind of gross, quite frankly. If you want me to really give you my personal feelings on it. But all of that being said, what the Browns did for him contractually speaking, I think completely changes the game now. We talked about this when Kirk Cousins signed the fully guaranteed deal with the Vikings a few years ago, whether that was going to truly change things. And I think there was a lot of skepticism. And, obviously it was a unique situation for him. He had been tagged in Washington. Washington didn't want to marry him long term. And that's one of the few decisions Washington's made in recent years where I kind of look back at it and say I don't necessarily blame them, because Kirk Cousins isn't a guy that's leading you to the Super Bowl and showed no ability to do that. But when it's DeShaun Watson, who is young, has been to Pro Bowls, is a tremendous talent on the field, but you look at all of the baggage and all of the concerns off the field, and part of that built into the contract with a low salary for 2022, taken into account that he probably will be suspended at least part of the year. You look at all that, and then if you're sitting there, if you're Lamar Jackson unsigned, if you're Kyler Murray going into the final year of your rookie deal and fifth year option after that, you're looking at this and saying, my goodness, this is, like I said, this feels like a sea change kind of moment for quarterback contracts. So much as we
believe the cap's going to go up, right? I mean, that's
how there's that too. Sure,
the cap's going to go up by $30 million 3 years from now. We'll give a quarterback $5 million too much, and it won't look percentage wise as they balance whatever that percentage is, 18, 19, 20% that Patrick Mahomes is getting against their salary cap. That's probably how and again, I'm an Algebra 2 guy, right? So I defer to Pat Moriarty on this. I mean, literally, this is what they do professionally, like accountants, right? I would say that whatever that ratio is that they want to see quarterback to franchise that they're comfortable with, 16, 18, 20%. Eric knows this better than anybody because he crunched the numbers back when Flacco was making $25 million against the cap, right? And they were in 180 range then, or whatever that number was, cap wise. 40 on 208 sounds like 19% to me.
Yeah, but it's going to be more than 40 though. I just feel this changes things so dramatically because we're not just talking about the average annual, we're talking about the guarantee. He got $230 million fully guaranteed. And we're talking about someone who might not play in 2022 from a disciplinary standpoint, or may only play 8 games or 10 games, whatever it ends up being. So I look at all of that, and I will say,
imagine if one of these girls had a videotape of it, of something,
sure,
and then that comes out 18 months from now on TMZ, and you're into $230 million on him. I guess, as Andrew Brandt would say, then the Browns would just say, we'll get lawyers, and that's how that would go, right? But when you get this deep into a court, I can't imagine the palate for the other 31 owners to say, what are you doing, dude?
Well, and that's the big thing. And now the other 31 owners and general managers and front offices would argue this is a very unique situation, because speaking about it in terms of football, with multiple teams vying for his services, talking about the fact that he was on the trade market, the fact that he had a no trade clause. I think that's something that's interesting here as well, as far as ramifications for that. Not that you see no trade clauses used a lot in the NFL, but typically you've seen them used for quarterbacks. How does that change now? So, I just think this is a far reaching kind of situation where, putting aside just for a moment the icky legal and civil suit part of this, and the bad PR that clearly the Browns don't care about. But, what does this mean for Lamar Jackson? What does this mean for Kyler Murray? What could this mean for Trevor Lawrence if he ends up being a rock star? This is big in that way. And that's where, if you're the Ravens looking at this, and I know Lamar hasn't wanted to engage, it seems like, but at the same time, if the Ravens are only, if their offer was 37 or 38 million per year, they're way too low now. That's really what it comes down to. And waiting, we're kind of seeing what waiting's going to do. A deal like this gets signed and it's going to change. Everyone's going to want fully guaranteed deals. And now You look at it, Aaron Rodgers is making $50 million per year, and Watson's at what, 46? Mahomes was already at 45, but Mahomes' deal is kind of done in the more traditional sense, the long-term deal that benefits the team over the years. Josh Allen, same thing for him at 43 per. So, the cost of doing business has gone up. And as much as we can point to Lamar and say, okay, he didn't play well in the middle of last season, and you expect, he needs to bounce back, and that's true. But at the same time, if he does bounce back, then at that point, he's going to be saying, yeah, I want $50 million per year. And it's that simple. And if the Ravens say no, then he's going to say, you can trade me then. So my point is, it's serious now. Not so much saying it's serious in a doomsday
landmark
sense for the Ravens.
Call it if it were a law case, we call it a landmark thing in a lot of ways for the league and where the bar is for humans and women. I mean, this is, and also, I mean, let's call it what it is, right? Like, seriously, one shitty franchise doing business with another one. Like, literally, just two really bad doormat. You mentioned the Texans and the no trade. How the hell did he get a no trade deal to begin with? Like, the Texans being that dumb, and then all the racist, stupid stuff the Texans have done, and their ownership, from the old man who's now gone to the kid, to having an African-American quarterback that somehow 22 women and the lawyer from Three Door. The whole thing, top to bottom, is just PU Houston Texans, PU Cleveland Browns, and therefore PU NFL. And by the way, Luke, I'm going to the NFL owners meetings in 6 days. I will be poolside with Kmish and meeting Sashi Brown and like all of that. I'm wondering how this is going to smell because, and by the way, you want to give I'll give you our Kevin Byrne honorary PR note of the week for the National Football League. We used to go to the owners' meetings, and there would be an hour-long breakfast on Monday with the AFC coaches and an hour-long breakfast with the NFC coaches on Tuesday. Then they condensed it to do 1 hour with all of them. Mm-hmm. Now it's 2 days, and the AFC's Monday for half an hour, and the NFC's Monday for half an hour. So I don't know the math on that, but it's going in the other direction from quarterback contracts as far as percentage-wise. So I am going down to the owners' meetings, and I've been down there for some scandalous stuff, right? Like, I remember being at Tomlin's table when the Roethlisberger thing happened, right? Like, I was sitting there for all of the scandalous deals, moving franchises. I've seen it all. This is going to be a fresh take for me because it's been a couple of years, but I would think that guaranteed contracts are just a no-no. It's just something we don't do in this league. And I would think that somebody's going to have to sit down and have a talk with Jimmy Haslam because it really is outrageous, right? I mean, it's an outrageous amount of money for a guy, and we've just begun to talk about it, but to your point, the league has to deal with this and say that's an outlier and none of us are doing it. Or whoever gets Lamar promises Lamar $230 million, which on the face of it, we'd say that's outrageous on Friday, right? If Eric DeCosta guaranteed a guy who was gimpy the last 6 weeks, $230 million, whose wheels, as we all know, are going to devolve over the next 5 years, we'd look at that and say, that's something Angelos would do with Chris Davis, guaranteed money in that way.
Well, but if you're players and your agents, why wouldn't you want guaranteed money? Lamar Jackson's been an MVP. DeShaun Watson hasn't won an MVP. Kirk Cousins has gotten guaranteed money. Lamar Jackson's been more accomplished than Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins hasn't won an MVP. Hasn't had a season where he was unanimous in that way or led his team to a 14-2 record. So, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, once the toothpaste gets out of the tube, everyone wants that now. So I think that's going to be, I think it's easier said than done, just saying, oh, we're not going to do guaranteed money. And part of me would also say, well, why shouldn't football players get guaranteed money? Why should baseball players get guaranteed money, but football players who put much more risk on their bodies and long-term health ramifications get that? So my disdain is that it's DeShaun Watson setting the precedent here because of what happened off the field.
It's Joe Burrow or Patrick
Sure.
Mahomes,
So, but the point is now every quarterback, and they're not going to say this publicly, but behind closed door, their agent's going to say, DeShaun Watson, you saw what he did. And look, we can blame the Browns here. New Orleans wanted him. Carolina wanted him. Atlanta wanted him.
Watson hasn't won anything. Like in this league, he's won nothing. So to some degree, giving money away and like all that, I mean, that's the amazing part. He's not some accomplished quarterback. He's
made 3 Pro Bowls.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, he's a good, like, you know, let's not make the disdain for him diminish that he's been a pretty darn good quarterback. I mean, he really has. So, you know, let's not just go back into this, oh, if guys have won a Super Bowl, because if that's the case, then no one would have gotten paid for a decade and a half other than Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, basically.
To be top of class, he's not the best quarterback in the National
Football
League.
But that's not how this works. But you know, Joe Flacco never was. That's not how this works. It works in terms of leverage, in terms of demand. This was a guy who had 4 different teams after him, vying for his services to some serious degree or another. And the Browns were even ruled out of it. And then they give $230 million guaranteed. So the point is, when it happens, if I'm any other quarterback, and especially quarterbacks who have a better off-field reputation than this guy, why wouldn't I be asking for that and more? So that's just the reality of it. And I think that's where things become a little more uncomfortable for the Ravens now, as we are talking about Lamar Jackson and contract and what he's going to want. And whether he has an agent or not, it's not to say that he's not going to want that. So, you know, what happens now? I think it's going to be fascinating with him, Kyler Murray, and every other quarterback now moving forward. If DeShaun Watson could get it, given his off-field circumstances and how much of a PR loser that's going to be, although, like I said, Browns don't care, and I'm guessing most of their fan base probably won't care when it's all said and done if the guy's good. And that probably says as much about us as a society as it says about him or the organization. But that said, if you're a quarterback looking at this now, moving forward, like I said, it's a sea change. It's a new benchmark now that teams are going to be reluctant, but I think quarterbacks are going to be pushing for this now harder and harder and harder.
Luke Jones can be found at Baltimore Luke. We can be found together at BaltimorePositive.com. The Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery. Moving to Fadley's. I got my Fadley shirt on. Look forward to some mac and cheese and some crab cakes and deliciousness at Fadley's this week. Dan Roderick's going to be joining us, as well as Attorney General Brian Frosch. Been a long time coming. Some great Baltimore Positive conversations coming down the pipe this week. And we have not heard the last of the DeShaun Watson situation because I'm chasing Jenny Vrentas. I know Steph Stradley's coming on from Houston this week. So we're going to have some great conversations about that and more. I'm Nestor. He's Luke. We are WNST AM 1570. Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking. Baltimore Positive.